There are certainly some bold strategies employed by college football programs, coaches, universities, departments, whatever the case may be, from time to time. And I enjoy looking at various thought process, various schemes, different ways to operate. The current way in which Dabo Swinney is operating is certainly an interesting approach. Things have not gone well for Clemson lately. And that's even, I think the Tiger, like the most faithful Clemson fan would tell you, like, it's not been great lately. And I don't think that there's going to be, some change on the horizon or anything like that. But I do wonder what the thought process of Dabo Swinney is, what the thought process of Clemson University brass is, the fan base, because it hasn't gone well, and he hasn't really handled it well either. Last week, Dabo Swinney said that maybe they should lose some games so they could, lighten the bandwagon, so to speak, a little bit. Because sometimes the bandwagon can get too full and the expectations become unreasonable, etc. And I find that really interesting because like it's pretty much the same thing as like a politician being like, hey, don't vote for me. I don't want your support. Like, oh, okay. That just is such a weird, and I don't even know if it's weird. It's just such a foreign, I mean, it's kind of weird. It's just such a foreign concept that somebody would shun the idea of like, hey, I don't want you to be a fan of our program anymore because I don't want to deal with your unreasonable expectations. And when you set the expectations due to your overwhelming success, it's like, okay, you're a product and a victim of your own success. I do have some sympathy there, but at the same time, telling your fans like, hey, stop caring so much about this because it really puts a damper on my life is like, wait a second. You start connecting the dots there, and it doesn't track necessarily all the way through of like a logical thought process. So it just is such a bizarre thing to say because it's quasi admitting defeat. It's the equivalent of saying like, hey, we're not going to be able to ever exceed the expectations you have set for us. Like, but it shouldn't be the fans' expectations you're trying to surpass. It should be your own expectation. The standard you set is what you should be trying to hit. And it seems as if Dabo Swinney, who I don't think is stupid by any stretch of the imagination, I don't like him all that much, truth be told, because I think that when it comes to Clemson, it's all about Dabo. It's always been about Dabo, and by God, it's always going to be about Dabo. I digress. He set the standard, and the standard was really good for a really long time. They had a really long run of success, either at the top of or clutching the pants of the top dog in the sport for a long time. They had a sustained era of success that is now obviously past them. Earlier this year, I was like, I'm not ready to close the door on. It's over. And that's fine because you can either adapt or die. And they have refused to adapt. And since the only other option is die, that program is going to continue to go down for, in my opinion, until either one, Dabo adapts, or they flat out decide like, okay, we cannot go back to where we were at the end of the Bowden era. Just can't do it. But the idea that you are going to tell your fans like, hey, some of you, I don't want you to be fans of ours anymore is like just kind of shocking and bizarre because you don't generally hear that, but it is admitting defeat. It's admitting I'm never going to be able to get this thing back to where it was. So I need you to lessen the expectations and I'm going to lessen my standard. And that's not going to be a popular thought process and a popular decision made by Dabo Swinney. And fans don't generally parse things out logically. So he's got that benefit. But If I were a Clemson fan and I heard my coach go like, hey, if you think we should be winning games every week, I need you to stop being a fan of ours. Like, well, wait, what? What did you just say? Did you say that you don't want me to be a fan of this program if my expectation is that we win every week? And not even maybe win every week as much as be competitive every week, not lose to teams we shouldn't lose to. If that's the expectation, then maybe you're the problem. Maybe the program isn't the problem. Maybe this university, this team, this fan base isn't the problem. Maybe you're the problem. And so I think that's a fair thought process to have, is like, listen, Dabo, I'm going to be a fan of the program whether you are the guy leading it or not. And if you don't think you can get to the standard that we believe we should get to, and believe me, there are programs and there are teams that have unrealistic expectations. And maybe that'll be like a winter episode or something of like, okay, who is irrational as hell? And that could be fun, but that's not the topic today. But for you to just address your fans and be like, listen, the dynasty is over, so get off the bandwagon, is like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, what? It reeks of a guy who's somewhat desperate, but then also in losing the grip on a situation that he has had firm control over for a really long time. And I find that like situation fascinating because Dabo Swinney had to be the guy who got his feet entrenched in that program. They built this ginormous success, and now you see it gradually start to slide away because there are eras in college football. And we are now in the transfer portal and NIL era. And if there is a coach who is less equipped to handle that than Dabo Swinney, I don't know them. He has led the charge against NIL. He was the one who famously was like, if these kids start getting paid, I'm going to quit. Okay. But everybody else in America now is recruiting out of the transfer portal, where he is recruiting out of high school, which I understand the allegiance to that style of recruiting. That if you firmly and truly believe that our best path forward is to recruit a bunch of 18-year-olds, develop them, and then when they are 21, we can put them on the field, that's great. But everybody else is going, I'm going to recruit 20-year-olds, and when they're 22, I'm going to put them on the field, and they will have 3 extra years of being in a college football weight, strength, and conditioning program, understanding the terminology and getting that high-level coaching. Obviously, those schools are going to have an advantage. It's not like all that difficult to see the benefits of recruiting out of the transfer portal, especially at really important positions. And Dabo Swinney has refused to do that. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But also, not many other coaches get that opportunity to test that theory because they don't have national championships backing them up. That when you come into my office to try to fire me, you can look at the trophies and go, oh, well, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. So he has a little more leeway than a lot of other schools and a lot of other coaches do. But it clearly ain't working. If you're trying to stay at the top of that college football mountaintop, you got to adapt. And I don't know that I would trust him to do that. So one, for him to tell his fans, like, some of you got to go, is outrageous to me. But I'm just an onlooker. The other side of it is 95% of the time, a player screws something up. Whether it's if the coach has a perfect game plan set and they lose, they go into the post-game press conference and say, this loss falls on me. Hell, we saw it a few weeks ago with Dan Lanning. Now, Dan Lanning at Oregon lost because he was too aggressive. They lost to Washington because he made some boneheaded decisions. It's just the reality of the situation, but he owned it. Came into the press conference, said, this loss is 100% on me. That's my bad. I screwed it up. Even when they didn't screw it up, even when it was one of their players, 90% of the coaches will walk into that post-game press conference and go, it was my job to have us prepared today, and I didn't get that done. Or whatever generic bullcrap that they'll never get pressed on in a post-game press conference is the general sentiment. Clemson lost on Saturday. And when Dabo Swinney was asked about the play where Cade Klubnik was stopped short of the goal line, he was asked, was that an RPO? And he said, no, it was a give. And he just decided not to give it. And trying to do too much, trying to be a hero, and didn't play within the system. Dabo, you're the only guy who has that information and is going to tell anybody. So you're throwing your players under the bus, warranted or not. And there's this sentiment in college football coaches that, like, I've got to protect my players at all times. And that is the exact opposite. That is pushing them into oncoming traffic, because I highly doubt that Cade Klubnik was going to give out that information of like, hey, hello, assembled media members. Just in case you were curious, I was supposed to hand the football off to the running back, but because I thought I'm going to be the hero today, I kept it and I got stopped short of the goal line. He's probably not going to volunteer that information, and nobody else on the offense, unless there's like real chemistry problems and real character problems inside the Clemson locker room, nobody else is going to volunteer that information either. So for Dabo Swinney to just willingly, and it's a pretty simple question. The reporter's like, hey, was that an RPO there or what the deal? And he's like, nope, was supposed to give it. Oh, so that's awkward, because you have now pushed your quarterback in front of the bus. Nobody, if you say, yeah, that's what we had called, and we didn't execute. The follow-up question is never, well, how did you not execute? What could you go into deeper detail on how that execution was lacking? Is never the follow-up. They just go, oh, okay. So the idea that you're going to volunteer the information of, I'm not an idiot, he's an idiot, is like, wait, what are you doing? In today's era of college football, where it's pretty much like player empowerment, which I'm in favor of, the idea of like, you're going to go to the media and say, the reason we lost today is because our starting quarterback made a really dumb decision that I did not tell him to make, is just, it's so baffling. I think baffling is a great word. It's baffling conduct from a guy who either knows better and has just lost his give a damn, or doesn't know better. And I think both of those situations are bad places to be for Clemson, for the football program, and for Dabo Swinney. Either you have just completely like, I don't give a bleep, and I'm going to throw anybody under the bus as long as it ain't me. Or you're not smart enough to know that you shouldn't be, after a game, telling America that your quarterback completely defied what you told him to do. Neither one of those options is a great one. But that's where Clemson finds themselves. So Dabo Swinney, for the last, and believe me, it's not been a new development where I've thought, like, what are you talking about? What is wrong with you? But in the last week, it's been twice now where it has been like, did you think that through before you answered? Now, generally, I'm in favor of you not thinking things through before you answer, because otherwise, what the hell am I going to talk about if you're buttoned up and have, your bleep together? I don't get to sit here and talk about this for 15 minutes. Like, I don't have that opportunity. So thank you for being a hot mess. But it's just so wild to me that somebody who was so buttoned up and dialed in and was able to play the game so effectively for so long now has pretty much just had the wheels fall off and is as hot mess of a program as anything else in the ACC or any other somewhat above average football team in America right now. I just can't ever imagine really, I can't imagine Nick Saban after a game being like, I told our quarterback to hand the ball off and he didn't. This isn't my fault. It's his. I think part of the poop sandwich of being a leader like that is having to take blame for things that you didn't do and don't deserve the blame for, but you got to swallow that sword anyway. Like, you just got to take it. And Dabo Swinney didn't, and flat out gave it to his quarterback in front of God and everybody. And that's an interesting strategy, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. We certainly really do, honestly, truly appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great content we're pumping out here at Saturday Glory. And if you're listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping us get in front of more college football fans. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Daily Huddle from Saturday Glory.